This is Food Talk for Health. Here is your host, Tonia King.
Thanks for joining me today. On Food Talk for Health, we explore practical nutrition tips, how real food and lifestyle can really heal, prevent disease, and help boost energy. Each episode features passionate guests sharing their knowledge to help you eat better, feel better, and live healthier. Hope you'll subscribe to the podcast and share it with someone else who might benefit. My guest today is Allie Chandler, CEO of Upsell Health. Thank you so much for joining me today, Allie.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Reading your bio, you've got a lot going on. You're an amazing woman. Tell us about your story because it's quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am in marketing now for functional medicine practitioners and wellness brands, but there's actually a whole lot of other things that I did before I got here. So I started as a high school English teacher and actually wanted to quit that after 4 years and backpack through Europe. And that's sort of where my functional medicine experience came in because I got really, really sick on that trip. And it ended up being a chronic, long-term thing that I dealt with for 10 years.
Wow.
Basically overnight, was a super healthy person. And then all of a sudden I was having heart issues, neurological issues, trouble swallowing, panic, anxiety, just like night
Wow.
and day shift. Yeah. So that's kind of how I got into the functional medicine world was by healing myself. And then I ended up in marketing and now I'm a lot better and helping practitioners and brands grow and scale their practices.
So let me ask you, from getting so sick, did you ever pinpoint the reason that it started? And did you yourself start out with a functional medicine doctor to try to figure out what's going on here?
Good questions. Yeah. So it probably took me 4 years to figure out what the actual root cause was. And, eventually somebody asked me, I had been bouncing around from practitioner to practitioner and emergency room visits and all these different protocols. And somebody finally was like, has anyone tested you for Lyme disease? And nobody had ever mentioned it before. So we actually ordered two different tests because back when this happened, it was maybe 10 years ago that we were testing for it. There weren't great ways to do that. So he's like, well, let me just order, there's a blood panel and then there's this like DNA panel that can actually measure the DNA of the pathogens, which I thought was really interesting. So I tested positive on both tests for Lyme and then for a bunch of other strains of co-infection. So he was like, okay, like we know what's going on. But no, I didn't start in functional medicine. I actually was admitted to the ER right after I got back from my trip. And then I sort of went the more conventional route. They were referring me to like cardiologists just to rule things
Right,
out because I was
right.
having a lot of sudden heart issues where I had never had them before. And then my heart rate would be at like 220 beats a
Oh my
minute.
goodness.
And I was just sitting on the couch and I was like, this is not, obviously there were some people that were like, you're just anxious, you're just stressed. And I'm like, I don't think anxiety can cause 220 beats a minute.
Yeah.
Very extreme. So anyway, they refer me to a lot of specialists, pulmonologists, allergists, all these different people, just to kind of rule things out. At one point, they were worried about a pituitary tumor because my prolactin was high. So we went through like all of the brain tumor kind of scans and things like that. And when everything was like, there's nothing big that's jumping out, then I was like, okay, it seems like there's something else at play here. And then I kind of got into the functional world.
Did you yourself research herbs and supplements that might help you?
Yeah, a lot of what I did at first was just looking up, like, these are the symptoms I have. The thing that was hard for me was they were always changing. So it was never consistent. It was like one day I would wake up and I would have really bad brain fog. And when I walked, I felt like I was walking on a boat, like the ground felt unstable. So I was like, well, that seems neurological. The next day it would be like, oh, I can't swallow and I'm nauseous and I don't want to eat food and I'm having digestive stuff. So it was really hard to pinpoint just because there were so much, just different variety of symptoms. So a lot of what I did was learning, what could be potential root causes. I had never in my life thought about things like parasites or Lyme disease. And, in my research, it was like, oh, only third world countries really have this problem, and we don't really have these in the US. But I found out that it is true that people, I mean, granted, I was traveling all over, but I think these things are a bit more common than we realize. And so I did a whole lot of research until I found someone who specialized in identifying complex chronic illness and sort of eliminating all the potential root causes. So one of the things I loved how he explained was that everybody has this like toxic burden that looks like a bucket, right? Okay, so
Hmm.
you're gonna fill it with like you're exposed to glyphosate and you had like lead, exposure as a kid and you're eating food that has chemicals in it and eventually your bucket gets full, just depending on, what all of the things you have going on and genetics and everything like that. And so what he did was like, hey, here's all the potential root causes. Here's what you have going on according to testing. But what we're going to do is pull like a cup of water out of the bucket at a time in hopes that eventually your body can be unburdened enough to sort of like take over, right? Because
Right.
a healthy immune system could handle like a couple of these things and
Right.
manage it. But I was to the point where it was like, there were so many things going on that I was reacting to lights and sounds and smells and like everything to my nervous system was way too much. So he explained that analogy and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So that's what we ended up working on after 4 years of searching.
My goodness, it sounds like you started out as your own functional medicine practitioner.
Yeah.
And then it's finally nice to, actually find someone that can share that same headspace, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And I came to him with a lot of information, which I'm sure to some practitioners is a bit overwhelming because
Right.
I'm very type A. I'm very like spreadsheets and here's everything that I tried and I tried to like map it out and intellectualize everything myself and I probably handed him like a 60-page document that was color coded and it was like here's my diet and here's what I tried and here's what I think it is and that's just like, when you're sick, you're doing everything you can to figure
Of
out
course.
how to heal yourself. So, I'm sure some practitioners looked at that and were like straight to the trash, but it made me feel better just,
Oh,
having done my due
absolutely.
diligence. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you briefly mentioned the word diet, and that was my question. Did you change your diet? Did you change the food you were eating?
Yes.
And did that make a big difference? And how long did it take to make a
Yeah,
difference?
absolutely. That was one of the first levers that I was like, this is something I can control. And, looking into anti-inflammatory diets first and foremost. So I immediately went gluten-free, which seemed like, okay, this is pretty easy to do because there's a lot of ways you can, replace gluten. Although at the time it was a lot less than there is now, but I started getting into eating paleo, and then from there, I found the Whole30 diet, which I'm sure people are familiar with. But the point of Whole30 was basically to eat, veggies, meat, eggs, some healthy fats, and you cut out gluten, sugar, dairy, alcohol. You cut out all the things that could be inflammatory to your body, and you do it for 30 days, and there's like no mistakes. Like if you make any mistake, you start over. So
Right,
it's
right,
pretty intense, but the point of it is like it's an elimination diet. So then there's a reintroduction period after, so that you can slowly reintroduce things and say, like, okay, let me try potatoes. How am I feeling? Journal for a couple of days. Let me try like goat cheese or, there's like
right.
one variable that you reintroduce. So I found that to be for my body the best and the most compatible. Now I went even further. The sicker I got, I went to AIP, which is like an even stricter version of that you can't even have like eggs. There's
Oh
things
my
that are like
goodness. Is there anything left to eat?
really honestly no. It was I had chicken and plain veggies and maybe steak. Like that was it. And no butter, no like nothing on top. So that one was really, really tough. But at the
Did you
time,
make it
I was
through?
like,
Did you make it through both of those?
yeah, so I did AIP for maybe 5 months and
Wow.
yeah, but it was like I didn't have energy to cook anyway, so it was fine. It was like,
Right,
okay, I'll cook a big thing of chicken and some broccoli and then I'll just that's what I'll have, because I don't have
right.
energy to do anything else. So it was fine because it was like less prep. But I will say that the best I ever felt diet-wise was on Whole30. Like I felt absolutely amazing. I felt like I had energy again. I felt like my digestion got a lot better and I mean, I sometimes even now that I'm feeling, I would say like 99% better, I'll be like, you know what, I feel like I'm gonna do a round of Whole30 just to kind of like
Kind of
reset my
cleanse everything?
diet. Yeah, and so that's been really nice to kind of go back to it and like do all my meal prep. I have Pinterest boards I make where I like pre-plan my recipes and then I will like make my little grocery list and I'm like, I'm only buying things that are in these recipes I'm making this week. So,
Wow, that's amazing. So,
yeah.
you went through these health issues and sounds like you came out of it okay on the other end. How did you then decide to go into the whole marketing of functional medicine and deal with practitioners? What made you,
Yeah.
make that switch?
So it's a funny story. So the doctor who determined I had Lyme disease, I ended up working with him and he treated me and we did protocols together. He had a retreat. So at the time I was living in Monterey, California. I was bedbound at this time and not able to do anything, wasn't walking. Really, my new husband was taking care of me. And my doctor was in San Diego and he was having a retreat. And my husband was like, we need to go. Like, you need to spend more time, like, in this community. Maybe you can meet other people who are, dealing with the same thing. So we signed up. And I was like, honestly, at this point, he was carrying me to the car for doctor's
Oh,
appointments. And
wow.
so I was like, they're doing rooftop yoga. It's so hilarious that I think I'm gonna like show up. I'm worried about walking from the car to the front door. And these people are like morning beach walks and like rooftop
Oh,
yoga, which is a wellness retreat, right? Like you
of
want to be able
course.
to do those things, but I was like, I feel like I have no business going to this, but we went. And so I overheard this doctor on one of the breaks talking about how he really wanted someone to do marketing for him. And, part of the story I didn't tell yet was that after I got sick, I still moved to California and got my MFA because that was already in progress by the time I got sick in Europe. I was planning to move out and start this program that I had been accepted to. And so I had just graduated with an MFA in writing and sort of like a focus on marketing. And I overheard him talking, and I was like, I would love to work for him. Like, he's a great guy. He's helping me get better. And what better thing to do than to like
Right.
immerse myself in what is the content he wants to put out so that I'm learning and I can apply it to myself. So I asked him for an interview. I was like, hey, like, did you know? Think of like he's looking at me like this girl who's just laying on the couch at his retreat. Like, I'm going up to him and I'm like, I want to work for you. Like I want to learn this. I can help. I can write. And he's like, yeah, yeah, when you get back, just send me some information. And I was like, no, I want an interview tomorrow.
Wow.
So, yeah, so long story short, he ended up interviewing me that night. I went home and or to our little Airbnb and I did like a 23-point site audit and I put like a bunch of recommendations together and showed it to him. I had two interviews at the retreat and they hired me right like on the spot. So
Oh,
that's how I got into it. And then he ended up actually creating a huge supplement company maybe 2, 3 years later. So I worked for him for a couple years and then he brought me on as his head of content and marketing when he created this company. So that's kind of how I entered was really just being a patient and being assertive about what I want because
of course.
I've always been a high performer and so I think one thing that's hard for people who get chronically ill like that is relaxing and I couldn't do it. I was like I want to keep going and I want to keep learning
Yes.
and working. So
Yes.
yeah.
So then you ended up developing your own company?
I did, yeah. So I worked for his supplement company for 3 or 4 years, and then we worked with doctors who carried our supplements. So I had met a whole bunch of practitioners while working for him, and then they had some transitions with like their CEO and selling the company. So when that happened, I kind of went off on my own and had a couple practitioners I had met at the time reach out and say like, "Hey, are you doing your own marketing? Like I'd love to work with you." And so it kind of made itself like my business. I think I at the time had made my website in like 2 nights because I was like, okay, people are asking me, here we go. Might as well start a business. So yeah, it kind of just naturally happened that way. And then, have been taking on client. I think that was 2019 that I officially started it.
Sounds pretty exciting, how you are developing not only yourself, your health, your business, and now I read that you are actually creating an app Tell me about that. Meet your healer. What's that all
Okay,
about?
so it's very exciting. So, yes, one thing that I wanted to resolve since I've been feeling better is the time it took me to find the right practitioner, right? Like protocols and brands. And I wasted probably, I don't know, 60 to $80,000 of my own money just working with people and having it not move the needle or having it not be a good fit. And of course, like spent about 10 years sick. So, what I developed was an archetype system. So, it's sort of like a personality test, but it's for patients. So, there's a patient archetype quiz. There's one for practitioners and there's one for brands. And then I have a whole like matching logic. So, for example, if you heard in my story, I'm such a researcher, right? Like, I
Hmm.
want to be part of the journey. I want to look things up. I want to have it be like this collaborative conversation. And so that's important to me. And it also was important to me that a practitioner I worked with had been sick themselves. I know that's like a very specific thing, but I was so reactive at the time that I was like, I want to work with someone who was sick and got better. That was just like I don't know, it was a hard like boundary for me that I needed to work with someone like that. And he had a doctor on his staff that had Lyme and had healed. And so it was a great fit. And so basically this app, everybody will take the quiz when they come in, and then there's a whole like matching logic of what are your root causes and what's your archetype and what's the compatibility, what's the location, like there's all these levers that go with the matching. So the point is that patients can find practitioners to work with, brands can find practitioners to work with, and there's sort of this like whole three-part marketplace matching system. And there's content, there's going to be like challenges and like a daily calendar and all of these activities, community forums, things like that. Because when I was healing, I was also very lonely. So I was thinking about, what did I want? Well, I wanted people who had the same things going on as me, right? Like I wanted to
Right.
talk to other people who had Lyme. And at the time, like Facebook groups weren't really a thing, which they are now. But yeah, so anyway, there's a whole lot of things going on, but the point of the app is just to match patients with the right practitioner and the right brands that are aligned with what they care about in their own healing.
I think that is so important because it's so hard sometimes to find somebody not only that you really like, but
Yeah.
that you feel can really help you. Because in our own communities, we may not have that right person. And now with telehealth happening, it doesn't matter where they are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so I would say like half of it, if you think about, is sort of like their personality, your compatibility on what you believe. Do you care about lab testing? Do you need to see data? Do you care about like the mental and emotional healing? There's so many different components of healing. And then the other half is the root causes. So do they treat what you actually have going on? Do they have the right testing or the right protocols that actually match what you have? So it's not only did they do what I need them to do in their practice, but it's also like, are we compatible with how I want to heal, how they communicate, what they believe, where are they on the scale of conventional to like very functional? So there's a whole lot in place. But yes, personality is a big part of it because there were practitioners that on paper looked like they would 100% help me. And then we got on, our first visit and I was like, it's just not
No,
energetically a match. Like it's just
right.
not, I can
You,
tell that it's
you,
not going to work.
right. For me, it's all about vibe. And you
100,
can tell if you have a vibe with that person or not.
exactly.
That is just so important because, sometimes I wonder, you go into a doctor and do they even ask what you're eating? Is
No, they
nutrition at
don't.
all part of the scenario? And a lot of times it isn't. And I
Mhm.
find that really distressing.
It is because I feel like that's really the first piece for a lot of people is like, what are you putting into your body? And
Correct.
like food is a huge part of that, but also like water. Are you filtering your water? If so, what type of filtration? And even air, like air filtering. But food is definitely something that I think it's almost underrated. I know there are practitioners who give like a menu, like, hey, here's what I give to everyone. But I do think that it's a little bit more, there's more like nuances to it, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody's body is a little bit different. And yeah, there are things that across the board we can say, like Twinkies are probably not you know, great part of a healing diet, but I also hate to say like there's good or bad food. Like I think that also as we're putting food into our bodies, it creates this like shame and it creates all of this like emotional side of it too. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of, obviously macros. I lift a lot, so I care a lot about like my macros and making sure I'm getting protein, but also micronutrients and like am I eating colorful vegetables and polyphenols and antioxidants? And I think there's a lot more nuance to it than just handing someone a piece of paper that's like, here's the diet that everybody goes on and this works for everyone. Um,
Right. Because
yeah,
it doesn't work for everyone.
yep,
The
exactly.
Mediterranean diet may work for somebody. Somebody else may be totally
Right.
keto. We
Yeah,
live in such a different world now. How many years ago we weren't even talking about all of the different choices that we have now? It's a
definitely.
whole different world.
Yeah, it is. And I think one thing that I really enjoyed when I was healing was when I finally was able to buy a house and growing my own fruits and vegetables and just like got really into the whole process of, you know, from planting it as a seed and all the way through, cooking. And so that was kind of fun once I had the energy to really grow my own food. I have maybe like 50 to 60 different fruits and vegetables that I plant every year. And so
Wow. That's
yeah, so
amazing.
it's been really good. And this year I'm hoping to get, I don't know if you've seen those hydroponic, like the self-watering walls, they're living walls. So
No.
yeah, I have this little outdoor patio area. So I'm going to start with maybe one wall. You can do like herbs and, probably a couple different vegetables, but it's all fully self-watering, which is really the thing that when I get busy, I'm like, I don't want to, water everything. It takes like an hour because I have so many, plants.
Right. And
Yeah,
it depends where you live, if even if you get much rain, because
exactly.
it's like, okay, are we having natural watering or do I have to
Yep.
actually physically go out and water?
Yes, exactly.
The fact that when you make your own food, then you know what's going in it,
Exactly.
in your
Yeah,
meal.
it's true. And, when I was in California for my master's and kind of figuring out my illness, I did work at farmers markets for a little while and I sold blueberries and apples. And so in the Bay Area, so it was really fun to get to know the farmers and the people
Yeah.
who are actually like producing the food. It's a great community. And we often would, at the end of a market on a Sunday, we'd walk around and trade and help each other out. And I feel like it was so nice to get to know them and their processes. And
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a whole, even the people that don't spray pesticides, for example, but they can't afford the organic certification, they'll
Right.
tell you. I mean, they're upfront about like all their processes and how they grow the food. So it's great to go to farmers markets and just ask questions, and they're always happy to answer.
We are talking with Allie Chandler, CEO of Upsell Health. Now, what does Upsell Health provide or do for any of us that might check it out?
Sure, yeah. So primarily, when I started it, I worked with practitioners, but also wellness brands, things like infrared saunas or castor oil packs, or even like food companies, a lot of those subscription companies where you can kind of like cook, whatever the box arrives, you open it and you cook. So anything to do with wellness. What I'm doing now is I'm sort of expanding into that patient audience with, of course, my app and trying to help patients find the right people to help them heal. So anybody who's interested in wellness, I think, could benefit. There's something that a lot of people have been downloading recently, which is my brain healing blueprint, which if you just go to upsellhealth.com/brain, you can download it. But it's all of the tools that I use that were only on sort of like the mindset, the mental and emotional side of healing. So no supplements or protocols. But what did I find helpful, going through this pretty severe illness and keeping my mindset in the right place and keeping it in, this sort of like positive place for healing? Because I think a lot of people can get stuck in that victim mindset or just kind of get, of course, like really down and depressed or anxious and worried about their health. So I have, a bunch of tools for people if they're just looking to like get better or if they struggle with any of those things, whether or not they have really severe chronic illness or maybe they just have like hormone issues or gut issues and that's why they're kind of looking into the food side of things. So yeah, so I'm kind of expanding into like giving advice for people who are going through what I went through because it was a really lonely and sad time. And I just want to offer a lot of hope and support for people that are kind of in that, kind of wrestling with it currently.
I think the key here is that you have been through it, and
Yeah.
hearing it from somebody who has been through it makes all the difference.
I agree. Yeah, and it's great because I'm able to offer that message of hope from, like I said, being bedbound. I was 26, and I
Wow.
was healthy my whole life, and And now, this morning I went to the gym and I worked out for 2 hours. I did leg day. And I
Wow.
never, ever would have thought that I would be able to do that, knowing how sick I was. So, and granted, everyone's story is different, but I love offering, my story of hope and transformation and like, hey, I was in a really, really bad place, but I'm thriving now and I rarely have symptoms. So I'm happy to share, whatever I think can help people get to that point.
So I'm curious, what is your current protocol for staying healthy? What is it
Yeah.
that you
I
continue to
honestly
do
don't.
or have
Yeah.
changed, or like
It's a
what's
good
going on now?
I would say honestly my food and diet and working out are my staples. I'm
All
not a
right.
big supplement person anymore. I have taken so many as I was trying to heal, but I really try to get my nutrition from food. Protein, of course, and then like I try to just eat a ton of veggies. I'm a big like stir fry girl, so I do a lot of like
Yeah.
veggies, chicken, rice, kind of as clean as I can be. And I think, honestly, I know it's like such a cliche, but I do think food is the best medicine. Everything that we're putting in our bodies is so important. And I also had to work through, like I had said, sort of like some of the shame. Like I struggled with perfectionism. So a lot of times I would be on this like Whole 30 or, something like that. And I would be out with friends and I would have like, I don't know, a couple fries or something, and it would just put me in a tailspin. And now I'm
Right.
like, you know what? Like, I eat so healthy all the time. It's okay to have stuff like that. Like, my body's going to be fine. It's not the end of the world. And trying to, like, the way I speak to myself about food, I think is important. So that's been another sort of like the emotional side of eating that I've been working through. But yeah, just consistent workouts and food. I do take some like hormone support. I used to work for Microbiome Labs. I was their head of marketing and events. So I do take their spore-based probiotics still and just a couple of like base like B
Sure.
vitamins and things like that. But
Yeah.
very basic stuff. And if I don't take it for a few weeks, I don't feel it like I used to. Like if I missed a day before, I would wake up the next day and I'd be like, wow, I needed those to even like be partially functional. And so I think for me, it's really like the lifestyle side and the food and the working out, and then like supplementing as needed, but not much. I take creatine. I take some of the like gym bro supplements, but yeah, and creatine I'm learning so much about for brain health too, which is really interesting. But yeah, nothing big.
That's great. You sound like you really have got it together. It's such a wonderful success story. So, congratulations. Wow, you've come a
Yeah.
long way.
I know, and I'm able to speak about it now, but it was a
I
very
bet it
tough
was
process
really,
for sure.
yeah, it must
It
have been a
was.
struggle. Wow. We
Yeah.
are talking with Allie Chandler. Allie, thank you so much for your time. How do we find you on social media? How do people find out about your app and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, so upsellhealth.com is my main website. You can probably navigate to anything there. We have an app wait list. It's coming out in a couple weeks, our beta. So I'm really excited about that. And then on social media, it's all Upsell Health. So you can search that and find us anywhere.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Tonia King. Thanks for listening to Food Talk for Health today. If you like what you hear, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We'd love it if you'd leave a rating or a review so that others can discover the show as well. And be sure to share with someone who might benefit. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Food Talk for Health is produced by Creative Voice and Media. Our theme was written and performed by Rick King. Thanks for listening to Food Talk for Health.